I'm very pleased to be back with the podcast and have really been looking forward to this conversation today as I'm joined by Howie Zales. Howie is an Emmy award winning camera operator turned entrepreneur with several successful ventures in the television and broadcasting industry. He is the founder of HJZ Productions, a multi-million dollar provider of talent in the broadcasting industry, and Veridity Entertainment Services, which came to light over the course of the pandemic, providing high quality live streaming for the likes of sporting events and conference meetings. To help develop the next generation of television crew professionals, Howie also created the TV sports course, which I'm really looking forward to talking about as it's right up my street. Howie, thanks for joining me. How are things?
Nice to meet you. So honored to be here.
Thanks, man. It's nothing at all. I really appreciate you reaching out to come onto the podcast. How has work been with you lately?
Everything's good. Traveling a lot less, and just working on our businesses. Just trying to take them to the next level.
Researching the career path of yourself is hugely inspiring for someone like me who are just a few years into working in the industry. Tell me about how you got started and what inspired you to pursue the path that you're on.
Yeah. I always loved sports. I played sports. I wanted to play professional baseball growing up. a- at some point, I knew that wasn't going to happen, so I took an elective course in 11th grade, a junior in high school, and the description of the course was a trip to NBC studios in New York City, a tour of NBC at 30 Rockefeller Center, and to watch a TV show being taped. I'm like, well, how bad can that be, right? That should be an easy A. And I ended up falling in love with TV production. And I had 1 year left of high school, and thought to myself, what better way to, find colleges that had TV production programs, combine my love of sports and my new passion of TV. And I think, this is what my career is going to be. I grew up always going to Yankees baseball games, Mets games, Rangers hockey, and Knicks basketball games. I always watched the camera people for whatever reason, but I guess it was just instinctual, and I knew right then and there in high school what I was going to do.
I feel today it's quite unfortunate in that, particularly, my sport. I love a variety of different sports, as we talked about briefly off camera, but my sport is soccer, football, and it's the case today where it was always called the working man's game because it was a very working class sport, and increasingly now, due to the rises in ticket prices and whatnot, it become increasingly expensive. However, when I was a lad, when I was young, I come from a footballing family. I've got a couple of footballers in the family, so
Oh,
go,
awesome.
going to football games was second nature to me. It was something that, looking back now, I probably took for granted because I have always been able to go to see sports live and in the flesh. And what I wanted to ask is, and I think again it's similar in a sense, is your pursuit of a career within broadcasting and production. Was sports broadcasting deeply anchored in that decision?
Yeah, 100%. The only anchor really.
Yeah.
When I graduated college, I didn't know how to get into it. So being from New York and New York City, uh, I literally walked up and down the streets and knocked on every single door that said whatever productions, right? I had resumes, stack of resumes like that, and I ended up getting a job as an editor, as a production assistant at a TV production company. And a few months into my job, their editor left. And because of the internship I did in college, I knew how to use that specific equipment. So I ended up sliding into the editor role, and I hated it. And then I took a job, um, shooting news in upstate New York. Uh, and this is a cool story. I was shooting news with a reporter in the field. We'd go out every day on different assignments, sometimes multiple assignments. And one day, ESPN, which is the sports network in the States, um, called the newsroom. They were producing a college basketball game very close to where our TV station was. Someone called in sick. Some camera operator called in sick and they were in search of a last minute camera operator. Did they know of anyone that can, maybe fill that role? And one of the things that I always believed in is that if you put what you want out in the universe, somehow, some way, you're going to get it. And what I mean by that is I told everyone that would listen that I wanted to be a sports camera person. Um, and so when that phone call came into the newsroom, they know exactly whose name to recommend. And that was my first job. And that job, I went there and I gave 100%. I made a lot of mistakes, but I asked a lot of questions. I met a lot of right people. That became another job, which became another job. It snowballed to the point where doing these sports jobs, I was making more money doing that than I was doing shooting news, and the news was getting in the way of the sports, so I eventually left that full-time job.
Yes, sir. It only makes sense if that was what you had to do to pursue your passion. That's
Yeah.
fantastic to hear. Now, were there any influences or pieces of work, directors, programs in particular, films? I know is certainly the case for me as a bit of a film geek as well. That inspired you.
I guess just watching sports growing up, films in terms of sport to inspired me that for the to do this as a career, not really. I just knew that, math, social studies, that stuff really didn't interest me. I knew I wasn't going to be doing something like that. I had a little bit of an artsy background in terms of liking photography. Um, so I knew that was more my path. And, every job I went to, I, I, I always had a mentor. I would always look for advice and look for help and who could I model myself after? And I would just always ask a lot of questions.
In terms of developing your own skill set, because for someone like myself, whilst I do have a huge appreciation for cameramen and all the intricate details and facets of what goes into a broadcast and production of a sports program, for example, did you gravitate naturally towards the camera?
Um, well, Uh, Good. I started out as a handheld camera operator, and I found that although I would do the big studio hard cameras on sporting events, especially on baseball, because there's really no handhelds on baseball, I always gravitated towards the handheld camera because you're kind of in the thick of it. You're on the football field or you're on the sideline of soccer or soccer match. Um, you're underneath the basket for basketball. It's just to me, it felt more fun to constantly being doing something, and it made it go by quicker. And you were closer to the athletes, you were closer to the players. Um, uh, uh, so to me, it was more fun, and so that's how what I gravitated towards.
With being boots on the ground, so to speak, you certainly have a unique perspective of
Yeah.
creative process in production. As I say, I'm at a stage in my career now where I am training towards a specific role, but I've had a lot of experience shadowing people in production and in editorial, be that in trucks or be that pitch side, especially as I mentioned with camera operators themselves, who are all creative people with brilliant ideas in their own right. However, in terms of a TV broadcast, it is so collaborative and so many people
Yes.
have to come together. From your experience, how do you find that collaboration process working together on a broadcast?
Well, so we're all working together to tell a story, right? The story of the event, the game, whatever it is that we're covering. So, and there's multiple facets of how that story is being told. One, it's being told by the announcers of the event. They're telling it through what they're saying and analyzing. Um, and then as camera people, we're supporting what they're saying with the pictures that we're shooting. The audio department is supporting it with the correct audio to making sure that the announcers sound good and that the effects effects microphones that you hear, the football, the football players tackling each other. You hear the pads hitting each other. So that's the story of that you're hearing audio wise. The replay people are telling the story of what just happened and giving you the best angle of what just happened. So we're all working collaboratively to tell the same story, but in a different way. And just having paying attention to what's going on, listening to what the announcers are saying, so we can support what they're saying with our pictures.
Okay, that I think that is a fantastic way of viewing it almost, and I think you can attest to this. Something that I found very quickly, and one of the things that led me to viewing sports as a potential career is it's it's unscripted drama in its purest form, which I think
Right.
is what captivates people as much as it does, especially in this part of the world where I am and on Merseyside. It football is almost parallel to religion. People live and die by it, and it means the world to them. Was that value of viewing sports as a story something that guided you?
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And there's a bit of a ego into it, right? You're a camera operator, you want your replay to get used, right? You want the director to choose your camera shot. So what am I going to do differently than the other camera operator to make that director take my camera shot? I'm gonna make it I'm gonna make my camera shot look like a little movie, right? Am I gonna move right or left to give my shot a little more depth? Am I gonna go down on one knee and look up at the athlete so it would give them like the God look, what can I do to make my camera shots stand out so they use me more? Because I don't want to just show up to show up. I want to show up and be used and feel good about the job I've done.
100%, 100%. And on that subject, I'm really eager to hear about the TV sports course. It's clear from what you've said and when I've looked into it, your portfolio of clients that you've worked with, like the NBA, the NFL, and WWE, as you say, that there's not only a deep rooted love for sports, but a wealth of experience that you can draw on to share with others.
Mhm. Yeah.
When did you realize that you were at a stage in your career where you had the scope and the ability to branch out with these different ventures?
Um, yeah, I very early on, I started HJZ Productions, my first business, like maybe 2002, 3. I always thought, I was making a good living, but I always needed a backup plan. I thought, what if I get hurt? What if the phone stops ringing? Because it's not a full-time job. You only get paid when you work, and you only work when you get called. So I started this company to where I would hire freelancers the same as I was for sports and entertainment events, the same thing I was doing. We had a few I got one client, then we got another client, and then in 2007 we signed a union contract with the union that pretty much represents most of the TV industry. And that really kind of scaled us to another level, and where we started doing a lot more sporting events. And then we started to branch out around the country. And it just, kind of went from there.
People really, I think the hardest part for people is really getting that door open to them
Well,
and developing that skill set.
totally. And you don't need to go to college or university to, work in sports TV. Um, but it is difficult to get into. It's hard to, who are the clients? So although I worked hard to get into it, and once I got into it, I worked even harder. Um, but I always had mentors and people that helped me along the way. So I figured, what better way to pay that back than to help new people. So we were targeting, people that were about to graduate high school that didn't want to go to college but had this maybe love for this, or people that went to college for this like myself but didn't know how to get into it, because you can learn what you need to learn in college, but this is a really on the job training. You don't see this professional equipment in college or in high school. It's only on these big TV trucks that do professional events or games. So what we did was, I decided to create this course and wrote a book uh, on, how to go about what to say to clients on the phone when you're introducing yourself for the first time. We created a script for students. We created email templates on what to email clients, following follow-ups, after they received the job or after the job, what to do from the second they parked their car to the second they got back in their car when they showed up at a job location. We brought in the real life equipment that they would use on the job and showed them how to use it. So the first time they were on a job site wasn't the first time they were seeing that equipment.
Mm.
We taught them how to coil cable the right way. Uh, and then in the book, we outlined from a camera operator's perspective how to shoot baseball, basketball, soccer, hockey, boxing from every camera position in a general fashion, because every director has his or her own way of doing things, but pretty much there's general rules. We outlined for what it would be for an audio operator, for a utility, what to expect, what to do each time they worked.
That's fantastic, and I'm sure was of so much value for the young people that were
Yeah,
on the
and
course or by.
the best part about it was, since we hired TV people, I've hired we had 5 people take the course the first time. I've hired 4 out of those 5 people, and the 5th person got a full-time job. So it was super successful.
Yeah, that must have been so gratifying for you as well.
Yes, it was it's a blast to do. And COVID kind of put a damper on it, but we're definitely going to do it again in the near future.
Nice. That's good to hear. One thing, going off what you've just said in terms of essentially writing the rule book to help young people or those wanting to get involved in sports broadcasting to prepare for that career. One of the things I'd be interested to hear your perspective on, maybe you have experiences to draw on or you have recommendations. Certainly I found in terms of, as I say, getting that door open or getting that first job, dealing with rejection. I'm sure it's a huge thing that everybody in the industry at some point has had to deal with.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's part of it. You just gotta have some thick skin, or you know, um, it makes you go out and practice whatever your craft is more, so you don't get rejected, or you become the first choice. You know, um, I was doing a show, a horse race, that aired on NBC Sports. NBC didn't hire the crew, it was like a third party, but NBC sent their top director. and I busted my butt. I got every shot plus more than he asked for. And after the show, he came up to me, he said, Howie, he goes, "You did a great job. I'd love to see uh, you know, you on some of my other shows. We're starting this new football league, and this was in 2000 called the XFL. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but
Yep, been to it.
um, it was in 2000 and it was the original XFL. And he said, "Why don't you come do some other college football games with me? We'll test out your football skills, and if you're good, then we'll have you do the XFL." And I spent 20 something years traveling with this director doing just about every show he did for NBC and other networks. So you just have to show up, do 110%. And part of doing a good job is selling yourself, not overselling yourself, just selling yourself at what you're good at and what you can do, and always over delivering.
100%. And something that I take from that is having those positive relationships with people in the crew, and
Hmm.
being personable, and fostering those relationships so you are, for example, the first port of call.
Yeah.
One thing I was keen to ask is, with the development of digital over the last 20 plus years, there seems to have been a huge shift in the skills that are needed to be a valuable member of the crew. What do you look for most in young people who are wanting to break into the industry?
Just the proper attitude that this is not more important than what is going on around them. Not being stuck in their phones, not being stuck on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter or social media is not more important than actually working hard, doing a job, and caring about what you're doing.
I agree with that. And in terms of the technical requirements, because you still need to provide value on site. So I think it's best to put it to you in terms of camera work, being boots on the ground cameraman, or be that handling a hard cam. How is it best to approach developing your skill set and understanding of the technical requirements of handling a camera?
Yeah, one is ask a lot of questions of, older camera people or who have done it longer. During the lunch break, instead of going out to lunch and taking an hour or an hour and a half break, bring your own lunch, ask a camera operator, can you play with the camera for an hour? And just practice during warm-ups, when it's not what and you've developed a good relationship with a camera operator, maybe they'll let you use the camera during the warm-ups so you get real life experience. And the more you can do that sort of thing, or ask the person that's hiring, can you shadow that day? We give that opportunity to plenty of the people where they can come shadow an operator, uh, just to get the language down, because there's a different language that is spoken over the headsets no matter what position you're doing, right? So it's one thing to know how to use the equipment, but if the director says this, what does it really mean? Or, you know what I'm saying?
100%. Definitely on the terminology and language front, because it does sometimes feel like people are speaking a different language.
Yeah.
Something that has definitely rose to prominence in recent years is streaming services and OTT platforms. Now, I'm not a gamer, I'm not a watcher of Twitch, but like many
Me
others,
neither.
I'm still a keen user of streaming platforms. Netflix, Amazon Prime, and in the sports space, DAZN is huge too. Talk to me about Veridity Entertainment and
Yeah.
how you got a foothold in that market.
Yeah, so what we do, what Veridity does is we provide broadcast quality, live stream event production to um, either fully virtual events where people are at home, but it's a full virtual production, or what we call a hybrid event where it's like a corporate meeting or event. There might be an in-person audience, but there's a huge virtual. audience could be globally. We'll come in with all of our equipment, cameras, streaming servers, and whatever's needed, and we'll, take the PowerPoint presentations. We'll put it up on the screens in the room, and we'll create a whole virtual production that the quality is so good that it could air on TV, and it allows our clients, our companies, to reach a bigger audience because they could stream these globally. And we have security in place where it only needs to go to the people that it needs to go to. We've done sporting events, cooking shows, concerts, um, and we've worked with a lot of athletes, uh, doing all sorts of virtual productions.
Mhm. So just off the sheer range and variety of what you've just covered there, what that implies to me is that is a lot of different conversations with different people and getting into different rooms and shaking hands with different people. When you are fleshing out these business plans of, right, we want to hit the milestone of providing broadcast quality and standard in our product, and then we want to be of service to X amount of clients. How, because you've done this a number of times in your entrepreneurial ventures, how do you envisage the step-by-step process of developing each brand, as it were?
That's a good question. So the first business was pretty cut and dry. I knew I needed a backup plan, and I kind of focused on what I knew at the time, right? I and we only got bigger when I hired people to help. So we only scaled when I hired someone to help me make the phone calls. At the time, it was phone calls, then the emails. And then we got bigger again when I hired someone to take care of all the invoicing and payroll. And, then when we opened up Veridity, it was, uh, it was before the pandemic, and then the pandemic got shut down, and then we had to pivot and change entirely what the vision of Veridity was for. And then I met some of the right people, and we talked, and we got into live streaming, and I said there's got to be a business behind this. And a client called and said they needed to do an interview, 9 interviews of 9 baseball players, but the interviewer cannot leave her home. And he said, "Can you do that for us?" And I said, "Absolutely." I had no idea how I was going to do it, but we came up with these contributor kits. They're high-end computers with professional cameras and microphones and ring lights and Ethernet cables, and we'd send them to wherever these baseball players were, around the country, and we created these virtual productions, which we still do in different formats. And then we invested in other equipment, and now we do these events, whether hybrid or fully in person or LinkedIn lives, whatever the client needs, concerts, to help our clients get their message across.
Hmm. That is really interesting because that sounds like you have learned so much from that initial pursuit of a career within sports broadcasting and production.
I hired a business coach a few years ago a- and the best thing that I got from that experience from him was learning to think outside the box, and how can I prepare for 3, 6 months, a year down the road, right? Yes, I have this project and I'm working on this now, but what can I be doing to set myself up for future business, right? Um, and how can I think outside the box? What can I do with my skill sets that I'm not doing?
Just to sign off in terms of future plans, what you're hoping to work on in the future, the business ventures, what you're hoping to reach and achieve with them. Is
Mhm.
there anything you've got plans for?
Yeah, we definitely hope to do the broadcast sports course again, and just trying to scale our Veridity business to, get more clients and eventually, um, you know, I I I really love doing podcasts and things like that, but I want to take it to the next level and share my stories on a stage doing events.
Public speaking, cool. It certainly sounds like you've got the stories to tell, mate. So I wish you all the best of luck with it.
Thank you. You too.